Hey, what's going on, card family? Yankees Jets fan 71 back with another video. This is going to be the first in a series of videos. I wanted to show off some of my Knicks autographs that I have in my collection to celebrate the world champion New York Knicks. I've been a Knicks fan since about the 1982-83 season. I remember that season being the first time they went back to the playoffs in a while. Hubie Brown was the coach. They had Michael Ray Richardson, Bernard King, just to name a few. And Bernard King was my first favorite until the big guy Patrick Ewing joined. And ever since then, Ewing's been my number one Knick. And now Brunson's my favorite of the current squad. So I did want to show off some of the cards that I have signed by Knick players. Most of them are certified. So without further ado, let's take a look at what I got. Okay, so I set up three stacks. This is Knick players who weren't on, who were okay players or even some busts in here. This is my David Lee PC. For a while, I was really collecting David Lee because he was my favorite Knick at the time when the Knicks were terrible. And I got the championship guys on the guys who were kind of legendary status for the Knicks on this pile. So let's just start really quickly with the David Lee stuff. I just was always impressed by how this guy played, how hard he played. Even when the Knicks were terrible and they're just losing. This was around the time when I love this Bowman inspired autograph card. I remember going to Knick games at around this time because honestly, no one really wanted to go too much. The Beam Team card is sick. Look at that shine on that. That's not to say that the fans weren't coming out because they were coming out. This is my favorite David Lee card, this exquisite auto patch from Ultimate. And it's numbered to 190. No, it's numbered to 100. I'm sorry. But this was back in the day. This card, I got this at the time for 50. And this card was going for about 1,000 when it first came out. So I was able to snatch it up for a good price. Got to move this card out of the screw down. I hate screw downs. But this was around the time when Isaiah Thomas was the coach, or he was and he was in the office, and he fans were just chanting "Fire Isaiah" because he made some of the dumbest moves you would ever even think about. And David Lee was a bright spot around that time. Marbury was still with the team. We had to give up Lee when we got Carmelo. So, and Lee went on to win a championship with Golden State. So I will always have love for David Lee, and whenever I see David Lee stuff, I go out of my way. And if it's priced right, I'll go out of my way and grab it if I don't already have it. Here's one with him and Wilson Chandler, who Chandler was supposed to be a decent player. Unfortunately, I think the Knicks gave up on him a little too soon. Sorry for the glare on these cards. And Lee had that tip in, kind of like what OG had in the championship in the finals. I think this one's a really nice one too. The shine on this is just beautiful. The signature swish card, although around the times it was sticker autographs, so kind of took away a little bit from the aesthetic of the card. But that's my David Lee PC. I have some game use stuff. If you guys want to see the game use Knick stuff I have after I finish showing off the autographs, just let me know and I'll be more than happy to make a video and showing off the game use stuff. So let's take a look at the okay players, the players who didn't really make a big difference in the end result. I mean, Jamal Crawford, I've always liked Jamal Crawford. Couldn't play defense to save his life though, but he was a decent scorer for the Knicks. And we got Stephon Marbury, who was looked at when he got here. We were all excited that he came, and then him and Larry Brown had spats, and that was pretty much the end of Marbury. I think, yeah, Marbury was gone not too soon after. Here's a Raymond Felton autograph. His first go around, he wasn't that good, I felt. His second go around, he was much better. Here's one of the biggest mistakes in Isaiah Thomas's reign as the president of the Knicks when he traded draft picks, number one draft picks, multiple number one draft picks for Eddie Curry. And Curry was just a fat, lazy player and did nothing in his time as a Knick. Nate Robinson, around the same time as David Lee, he was a spark of energy off the bench. Loved little Nate. Chris Duhon was decent. He wasn't great. We got one autograph there of him, and we got this one over here, which is a duel with Bobby Jackson from the Kings. Here's another Wilson Chandler autograph. I love these sweet shot autos on the basketball. This is not going to be the first time you're going to see one. I mean, the Jamal Crawford was on a baseball, so I had to get that. Here's a big bust from the Knicks, Michael Sweetney. Did absolutely nothing for as high as the Knicks drafted him. I don't remember if it was injuries or if he just wasn't a good player. He didn't last very long, though. Ronaldo Balkman was drafted the same year, I believe, as David Lee. He was a Spitfire off the bench. They didn't nickname him the Tasmanian Devil, but unfortunately, he just didn't pan out. And before anyone says anything, I do know I have to replace the top loaders on these. I've had these in these top loaders for years. As soon as I'm able to, I will upgrade them. Channing Frye I liked. He stuck around for a couple years, but he was never the big scorer that the Knicks thought they were going to get when they drafted him. Here's another one of those sweet shot signatures of Quentin Richardson. Was never really a big Quentin Richardson guy. Another bust, Tony Douglas. It's a guy that we traded for, Jose Alvarado. Is it Alvarado? No, Calderon. Sorry about that. He was a little spark plug. He was on the team. I think he might have been on the team that went to the playoffs with Melo. But he was a guy off the bench, and he provided a little spark, and this is number 35. I barely remember Darryl Walker. He was on the Knicks teams when I first started watching the games. Here's a guy I loved, Tyson Chandler. He won a Defensive Player of the Year as a Knick. And he was part of that team that went to the playoffs with Melo. Here's Frank Williams, who didn't do anything of note. And this one is Marty Collins, another guy who did nothing of note. Same with Marcel Lampe. I told you, a lot of busts in this pile. Antonio McDyess, when we got him, he was done. His knees were shot, and we gave up a lot of assets to get him. And he might have played just 20 games with the Knicks. I mean, I remember they played him in a preseason game unnecessarily, and he hurt his knee. And he was out for most of that year and came back and played the last 20-something games of that year. So that was a trade that really didn't go anywhere. Here's a Jalen Rose sweet shot card. Kurt Thomas. Less said about Kurt Thomas, the better. Timothy Mozgov was interesting to me because he could have been a really decent center for the Knicks, and when the Knicks were starting to play well with Amari Stoudemire, I was at a game where Stoudemire hit a 3 right at the buzzer that would have beat the Celtics, and the refs waved it off. And that was the only time I've been at the Garden where it felt like all the air was left, was like just sucked out of the building. And Mozgov was on that team. And that's when the Knicks were starting to get better. But then he got traded along with a bunch of other pieces, like Felton got traded, Gallinari got traded, and they all went to Denver for Melo. And that was one of the things that Donnie Walsh was trying to work out a trade. Melo was going to come to the Knicks no matter what.
There was a few months left in the season. We could have just waited, and all it would have cost the Knicks was money. Obviously, you would have had to beat out other teams for Melo, but we could have gotten Melo for something other than players, which I never understood why they just didn't wait. But that's James Dolan for you, interfering where he shouldn't have. Discount double check Steve Novak. I've always liked Steve Novak. He's now a in-studio guy for MSG Networks. Kiki Vandeweghe, man. His father played with the Knicks. And his father became a doctor. He was Doctor, I forgot his first name. But Kiki was, I don't think he lasted long as a Knick. Played with them in the 80s. Mike Bibby didn't really last long with the Knicks either. I think he was a mid-season trade acquisition, if I'm not mistaken. Here's a card that I got to replace because look at the autograph bled on that. Mon Shumpert I thought was going to be a decent player for the Knicks, but didn't pan out. It's another Quentin Richardson. Here's the aforementioned Danilo Gallinari. Took him a little bit, but he finally got it right before he got traded to Denver for Melo. I suppose you have to give up something to get someone of Melo's abilities, but I hated losing Gallinari. Trevor Ariza, who was supposed to have been a decent player, he did last a few years. I believe he won a championship with the Lakers, if I'm not mistaken. And finally, a guy I can't stand, Andrea Bargnani. The Knicks gave up number ones to get this guy. He was already done in Toronto. Why they made that deal, I'll never understand. He came over and he just stunk out the garden. Ugh, another deal that really stunk for the Knicks. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the good stuff. Now, some of the players here I included on here, there might not be legendary players, but they did play key roles on like Knicks championship teams. Like Dean Memminger, his son is actually a reporter for News One. Dean the Dream actually had a game in Game 7 at Boston Gardens. I believe it was during the 72-73 season where he just went off on the Celtics and helped the Knicks win that game and move on to the finals to play the Lakers. So that's why I have Dean Memminger in here. Bill Cartwright was the center of the Knicks when I first started watching the team. He lasted a bit longer. He played, I believe he was on I think he might have been on a couple of the Bull championship teams, but I know he went to the Bulls right after the Knicks. Ernie Vandeweghe is Kiki's father, and I have his autograph here. The reason why I have him in this pile is because he was on the early Knick teams in the 50s that went to 3 straight NBA finals, lost them all. They lost one to Rochester, the Rochester Royals, who I believe are the Kings now, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. I'll have to look at that later. And they lost 2 to the Minneapolis Lakers. They should have won 1 championship. From what I read, so I believe it was either McGuire or Guerin who hit a shot that went in, but the ref didn't see it. How the refs weren't paying attention, I'll never know. And they waved the shot off and gave the game to the Lakers. I think it was against the Lakers. And the Knicks never rebounded from that and lost the series. So, and you can see right there, he's got the MD on there. So, Dr. Ernie Vandeweghe, got the fat bastard Eddie Curry, and Spencer Haywood, who was a Knick in, I believe, the 70s. Dick McGuire, who was a fan favorite in the 50s, became a coach for the Knicks in the 60s. He was the coach right before Red Auerbach took over the team. I remember Wilt Frazier was talking about him, and he said that Dick was a little too nice to be a head coach. I remember seeing video of him, and he would throw at the free throw, but he would do it underhanded. And I remember one of the first Knick games I ever attended in the 90s. My family was poor, so we didn't have money to go to Knick games in the 80s. It was either the Knicks or the Yankees, and the Yankee games were cheaper. So I got money for the Yankee games. But I went to a game in the 90s when I could have, when I was working and I could afford. And at the time I was working at Mount Sinai Hospital, and the doctor who worked there was a Knicks season ticket holder, so she would give me tickets for whenever she didn't go. And they had like an old timers day, and he was there, and they were all just shooting. They would line up. you'd get their flowers. They would line up and they would throw free throws. And McGuire was still throwing underhanded, which I always found fascinating. And he got every single shot in at his age. And I read that if you shoot underhanded, it's more accurate than overhand. I don't know how that works, but it worked for him. You got Cassie Russell, who was on the first Knicks championship team. He played the same position as Bill Bradley, and he was probably, in all intents and purposes, a better player than Bradley. But Russell was a bit of a hothead, so I think the Knicks shipped him off later on. My first favorite Knick, Bernard King. Man, and I've met him a couple of times outside. I wish I was able to have something signed. Actually, I do have something else signed. I'll show that in a later video. But he was always very nice to me, and he was the big Knicks scorer back in the day. I remember watching on WOR TV, the Knicks would be shown in tape delay. So like you'd watch the Knicks at like 11:30 at night, and I saw the game where he scored 50. He dropped 50 on the Mavericks, and then the next night they didn't show it because they didn't show all the Knicks games. But then he went and dropped 50, I believe, on Houston, on the Rockets. So he had back-to-back 50-game performances over Christmas weekend. And then unfortunately he tore his ACL, and back in the 80s they still hadn't figured out the ACL thing. So he did come back, but he was never the same player. I wish he would have finished his career with the Knicks, but I think he went to the Bullets, they were the Bullets back then still, and he finished his career there. And he had actually a really good season his first full year with the Bullets. He made the All-Star game, and he was averaging like 25 points a game, I think. John Starks. I honestly had so much beef with Starks over his shooting in Game 5 against Houston in the 94. It was at 95. It was 95, I believe. 95 championship series in the NBA championship series, and it didn't let go for a while. It took me a while, but I got over it. Did love watching Starks play, and I'd met him a couple of times, and he was still always very nice to me. This one was stuck behind. I guess I feel some tape residue. I really got to replace these. But that's a Channing Frye Sweet Shots autograph. So I'll put that with the other pile. And here's another John Starks autograph. Man, one of the autographs I lost. I had a 12 by 14 of the dunk, and I had gotten Starks to sign it, and I just never got around to framing it, and now it's gone. Maybe I can get it back again get another one done at some point. We got Latrell Sprewell. Big part of the Knicks run in 99. Of course, you got the man, Carmelo Anthony. I'm not as up on Anthony as a lot of Knicks fans are. People were thinking he belongs in the rafters with his number retired, and I totally disagree with that. He didn't bring a championship to New York. No, Ewing didn't either, and Ewing's up there. Ewing meant more to the Knicks than Carmelo Anthony ever did. I said what I said. And a couple of autographs of Walt Clyde Frazier. I love this acetone one. It's clear one. I need to get more Walt Frazier autos in my Knick collection, but he's starting to go up a little in price, and they're going to go even further once he passes. But I love listening to him call it a Knicks game. It's not a Knicks game to me unless he's on it. I was just glad the Knicks, Mike Breen, who calls the Knicks games in the regular season on MSG, was able to call the championship games, because that felt right to me. And we got an autograph of the captain, Willis Reed. One of the top 3 Knicks ever. I mean, you can make cases for Willis, Frazier, and Ewing as the 3 top Knicks of all time. For me personally, it'd be Ewing, Frazier, and Reed. And here's another one. I love this one. This National Treasures Willis Reed autograph, numbered to 25. Beautiful card. Got a Jerry Lucas from Prism. Knicks traded for Lucas in the middle of the 72-73 season. He was a three-point machine, this guy, and he's really smart. If you watched when the Garden was Eden on ESPN Plus, they did a video. Michael Rappaport directed it. They did a little documentary about these Knicks teams. This guy was very smart. He memorized the phone book. He went bankrupt and fixed himself back up more than once. This guy was brilliant, and he wrote a book about memory after his playing days. This one is of Red Auerbach. I'm sorry, Red Holtzman. Oh my God, please shoot me. I mean, I just called out a Celtic legend rather than Red Holtzman. But this is not a certified autograph. I did check other Red Holtzman autographs, and this one is pretty similar to what I've seen. So I'm pretty confident that this is a legit Red Holtzman autograph. I gotta put that one touch rather. We got one of Earl the Pearl Monroe, who came over in around the same time as Jerry Lucas did. And from what I read and when I heard, people were worried that him and Frazier weren't going to be able to coexist in the same backcourt. Well, they did, and they brought the Knicks another championship. That must have been one great backcourt. And to close this all out, got a index card from the great Dave DeBusschere. Now this one I would like to at some point frame up with a picture of DeBusschere and hang it up on the wall. So I probably could have saved this for another video, because I'm going to be doing other videos of some other Knick autographs that I have in my collections. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. Please leave all comments down below. Let me know which autographs you like the most. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. We'll go out with this. No, we'll just go out with these guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please leave all comments down below. Click that like button if you liked the video. And I will talk to you soon. Peace.